Alright, well, I'll keep this roll going, I guess, since I'm making progress, and lately I've been uploading the video pretty much almost every other day, feels like at least. It's been a beautiful day outside, just gorgeous. It's not hot, it's kind of overcast, great weather. Pooch has been out here chilling with me most of the day. Oh, Valkyrie. Oh, you hear that bird, huh? Anyways, I don't know what y'all want to see. Had a couple of little issues here and there, and may have fixed a couple of issues along the way, and moved along on some other issues or some other stuff that needed to get done. So, for one, this fuel line I thought had a leak, but it's been not quite 90, but right where it's at right now for several hours. So I think this new fuel line section up front is fine. Now I had tested from the hard line connection underneath the car back, and it tested fine, but when I connected this, I had a leak, and I even went back and tried to retighten it. So I might just try to pull them apart, clean the flare face, and reassemble and retest. I don't know where else I would have a leak. So, but I had already ordered new fittings because this right here is a China eBay fitting that is some cheap junk, but it has worked and has seemed to work fine on all the other fuel lines. So I figured it would work fine here. But so earlier today I went ahead and ordered, I'm gonna say better quality China ones, a little bit higher end. They're not the $30-$40 a piece ptfe fittings like Firewall and other brands like that, Earls and so on. So I try to avoid that if possible, because eventually this car will go to I'm blanking on the name. I think it's Earls something Flex, Super Flex, whatever it is. If you watch Devin Vanderhoof, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, I watch a bunch of his stuff and I get a bunch of input from him, and these dogs next door are going nuts. Anyways, I plan on going to the fuel line that he uses on all his drag cars, which is that Earl stuff. Along with the Holley stuff, this main harness was taped and had nylon braid stuff all over it. I disassembled it, stripped it, pulled the relay harness off because I'm not using the relay up here. Most of this connector will be repinned, and we'll go to that Deutsch connector. I went ahead and just plugged these in. These are all just loose wires, so they'll be ran the length, cut, and terminated. These will have to be repinned though, most likely. Most of them, because like this, for instance, won't do. Valkyrie, hush. Sorry for the dogs. Anyways, so this will have to be repinned. I'll have to change the gauge on some of this wiring because I'm using 16 for my trigger wire. This is 20. A bunch of this stuff's 20. Like all these inputs are 20. I'm hoping I have enough. Neighbor's got company. Anyway, so I hooked that up. I haven't started the electrical. That's for another day because that is exceptionally time consuming and will be at least 1 to 2 days worth of wiring to do it right and neat, etc. Because I'll have to braid it, heat shrink it, terminate it, etc. This was one issue I had. This rod. You can see it's bent now. My Sharpie mark's still on it. Anyways, this bent with the I think the 3/8 section of my tubing bender for my fuel line, and it seems to work fine now. Looks like it'll do the trick. One thing I don't really like, and I'm not sure if there's anything I can do to fix it, is before my throttle travel felt like a normal car. This throttle linkage or this throttle travel on this thing I don't know if it's this, I don't know if it's the pedal, I don't know if it's this rod. I wouldn't think it's the rod, it should just be 1-to-1 ratio. And everything should be like a 1-to-1 ratio. There shouldn't be any difference other than maybe the actual throttle pedal, the pivot point versus the length of this and the length of the pedal section. But this thing goes wide open throttle, it feels like, with that much movement. It is nuts. I mean, it's just like, that's the primary, that's the secondary. And you can see how much this rod on the throttle pedal is moving. It is not that much. So I don't know if that's normal or what, but it's gonna be a little tricky driving this slow through town, because you barely crack the throttle and you're giving it, you know, 20%. I mean, the linkage for this secondary opening is set at roughly, I think about 30. I'll have to check it with the Holley when I get it turned on, powered up, but it's probably about 30-ish% for the primary. So I mean, that right there is 30% throttle. I don't know, just feels like a good bit. But anyways, on to more stuff. Got my pressure regulator mounted. Got that fuel line ran, and it is tied down there. I had to run another rib nut, and I could not use one of my billet mounts because, well, they use itty bitty bolts, and I had to just use one of these stainless rubber insulated ones, which will work just fine. It's out of sight, don't really mind. But it looks like it'll work fine. My clutch braid, I'm probably gonna end up tying up on a clamp right here. I'll use one of these bolts and I'll just clamp it there, probably the same style clamp that I used for that fuel line. Obviously I got my coil mounted too. So those two are mounted. I still have to do my bulkhead for my heater lines. I'm kind of nervous to do that because that's 4 big ass holes that I have to drill that may end up being in the way when I go turbo. On to the big issue I discovered today. I got my filter in today. I checked fitment. It fits. Downside. These are the fuel inlet and outlet that you use for when running boost. Now, granted, I'm not running boost right this second, and that obviously that filter setup wouldn't be for boost. The shitty thing is there's not enough room, I don't think, to put the fuel lines on right here and here. So it's not a deal breaker, not a huge pain, but I do have to move those again. Now we'll have to use these. The shitty thing here is this is the inlet, this is the outlet, and this is a regulator, and it should be preset. I don't even know how the hell you'd check it, to be honest. I'm hoping it's just a preset regulator and you don't have, I don't even know if there's any adjustment on the damn thing. But regardless, I'm gonna have to feed my inlet over here, over to this side, and I'll have to change that fitting from that 180 degree to like a 45. And then I'll have to run this return further all the way over to here. And this regulator will just be opened up more than likely, because these are lower than that. So I don't know if they did this for aesthetics or what, but if I plan on running that filter, that's what I'll have to do. Otherwise, my other option would be to rig up a cold air piping tube and just kind of branch it over to the side somewhere. And I don't know how the hell I'd support it so it didn't rattle around or fall off with that tubing. Not to mention, I don't think this will fit with my hood, and I I'd really like to be able to run my hood and not have to modify it right now. So yeah, that's the predicaments for the time being. I mounted just the tubes up on the exhaust just so I could start figuring out how I'm gonna run it. I did go into the car and measure my drive shaft so I can, or how long my drive shaft needs to be, so I can go check my drive shaft and see if the distance actually changed with these new motor mounts. I'll check that later. I did swap the bolts that I had in the motor because I had some really long ass bolts in there to allow me to cant the motor back to get the transmission on. If you watch me, I'm sure you've seen Joe Daddy. He's mentioned me a couple times in his videos, and the car he's working on now has a bunch of stuff that this one does as well. But one of the issues he was having was with transmission, with these back bolts. The transmission he's using has a larger flange. I didn't have the problem up here, luckily. I think he figured his out. I watched a video earlier that he ended up getting this bolt cut to where it just barely makes it. But I think this one on this side, he still has to like push the motor down a little bit to get it to go in. So yeah, you get all kind of fun issues when you go with aftermarket shit. I did come back here because I still got these Deutsch connectors in. This is a 12 gauge one. So this is my fan to my fan, and this red one is a spare, so this other side is plugged. Same thing with this. These are my fuel pump. And this green one down here, you can see the plug in the top of it, is fan number 2 trigger wire and a spare. That's the spare trigger for that red feed off the fan. And these are the trigger wires for the fuel pump. Which is why, like I said, I don't need the relay up front, because I have fuel 1, fuel 2, fan 2, spare. Anyways, that's I think that's it for now. I don't know if I've gotten anything else done. That was the main thing, was mounting that stuff, working on this fuel line, working on that fuel line, getting this electrical out and getting an idea for what needs to be done, and test fitting the filter. I'm thinking the best solution is going to end up being to move these fittings to the back for the time being. So yeah, that's it for now. And I did order some insulation today. Sorry, that's one more thing. Well, not really insulation. I ordered hush mat for the Firewall. So it's kind of like Dynamat, but cheaper and not as sticky. But it's going on the Firewall, where I'll have a bunch of stuff that is going to be pinching it in place anyways. So I'm not really worried too much about it sticking. They also make some other stuff. Don't remember what the hell it's called. They have some odd name for it, like super mega awesome insulator foam. I don't know, something crazy like that. But anyways, it's a foam, like a 1/2-inch foam insulation. From what I understand, you run that hush mat and that foam, and it's... So we'll see, because I wasn't so sure about running the factory style molded insulation on here anyways. With as much aftermarket random shit I have, I'm gonna have to modify the crap out of it anyways, and they're fairly expensive for the good ones. I've heard if you go with a molded insulation, don't get the little cheap $50 one, get the like $150 to $200 one. So the stuff that I ordered is, it's $100 for the Dynamat stuff, it's another $100 for the foam stuff. So I think I'm gonna go just that route, because I understand that being better than the factory stuff. But yeah, that's it for now, guys. And I'll try to get some more done this week and get back with y'all on another update. I'll probably get the wiring done up front and maybe start on the exhaust. The plan is on the exhaust to drop it down, come to right in here and kick it outward, and then run. I have it's 2.5 off the headers, the collector, and I have a 3-inch 3-bolt flange, like what's on my exhaust over there underneath the bench, what was on the car. So I'm going to convert the 2.5 to 3-inch and then use my old exhaust pipe and just run a length down the inside of the rocker right along here. And then I'll bolt it to support in the old leaf spring pocket underneath here, since I'm not running leaf springs and I have that bolt hole to use. The only thing I'm somewhat sketch about is these 2-bolt like flared style flange on these headers. I don't know if I trust them not to kick or move around, because the only mounting point I have so far will be on that leaf spring pocket. The other support will be just straight off the motor. It's just that one hanger in the back. So I don't know if that'll be a problem or not. So normally I would assume they have a crossover, and the crossover keeps them from, you know, separating or bowing or whatever, moving around on that little ball socket, flange, whatever it is. All right. If anybody has any input for me, drop a comment. I love input, love questions, love info. Everything I've learned on this car and how to do this car has been learned from internet and YouTube for the most part. So if you have something to teach, teach. Later, guys.